One thing that was real important to us in doing another Starship Exeter episode was to bring back the core members of the crew, and those core members are four people: Captain Garovic, Commander Harris, Cuddy, and Communications Officer Bafuzalek. So, in order to do that, we had to convince Mike Buford, who plays Cuddy, and Holly Guess, who plays Commander Harris, to come back and reprise their roles.
Josh, out of the blue, got hold of me. And he goes, I've been trying to look for you for the last 3 years. And so I said, okay, well, here I am. It's done. And I'm going like, it's done? He goes, yeah, Savage Empire's in the can, and it's on DVD. And that just sort of blew me away. I'm going like, I'm thinking this thing's going to be a dusty VCR case, and he's talking DVD. And I'm going like, what have you guys been doing? And so he sort of ran down what Jim had been doing and got everything together. And he goes, and guess what? We're looking at doing it again. Are you in?
Well, I originally took the part because I thought it would be a lot of fun. And it turned out that it was. And when the second episode came about, there was such a big fan following and so many people became involved and wanted to contribute that there's no way I didn't want to do it.
After the response that Savage Empire got, they were real enthusiastic and excited about doing another one, so it turned out to be quite easy to get them to come back.
And as far as where I came up with Commander Harris, I had all these great ideas of what I was going to do. I had a friend who was going to help coach me with my British accent, and, well, none of that ever happened. So I just made it all up and just hoped and prayed that it comes out in the end. Well, Commander Harris is a Starfleet brat, is what a lot of people think, because her father was an admiral. So a lot of people feel she was just inherited the role that she had. But throughout, especially this second episode, you realize that she has actually earned her place, earned her command, and you get a lot more respect for her.
Well, it sort of goes back to when Josh first came to me with the idea, and actually it wasn't even that he came to me. He was just, we worked together doing security, graveyards, and he would be doing these storyboards. And just kibitzing and looking over his shoulder once or twice, I noticed that he'd actually sort of based a character on me, which was, I was bald. And he had this black bald guy, and I was going like, what's this that you're working on? And, oh, me and my brother are working on this idea, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going like, that's looking a lot like me there, buddy. And he goes, well, I'm kind of basing the character on you. And all of a sudden, I sort of became Cuddy. And so I started playing with it. And I really didn't have any idea of a personage of Cuddy. I sort of started filling in the background with myself, former Marine. And so I was trying to think of what would this Starfleet Marine be. And yeah, he would be this softer version of the kick butt that he once was. And that's kind of where I started going with Cuddy.
What I like about this episode is how it takes some characters that we were barely able to introduce the last time around to bring the same actors, bring them into a second production where we can really start to show more interaction between some of these characters. Holly's character in the first film, because of the way that the script was written, she didn't even interact with anyone except for over the communicator. So this time we actually see Holly's character having some dialogue with the other characters, and we get to be in the same scenes with her. But not just Holly. Michael's character in the first episode, because Michael moved to Las Vegas and we had to rewrite some things for his character in the first show. His character was much reduced, and so this time around we get to see much more of Cuddy. and then we still have the characters that we did have a pretty decent chance to introduce in the first film, which is Captain Garavik and Mr. Bafuzalak.
In June 2003, we were contacted by Scott Cummins, who was wondering if we would bring outside help in to produce the movie. And he had directed some short independent films at the time, and we told him, yes, we're interested. Send us your stuff and let's take a look at it and see if we like it.
Past projects that I've done, my whole filmmaking thing started when I was basically as an extra on a television series that was filming in Portland at the time called Nowhere Man. They were on just before or after the debut of Star Trek Voyager, actually, was their lead-in. And I was an extra on it several times. I was on TV a couple times, and really what I was doing it for wasn't to be on TV or wasn't to be an actor. I wanted to watch the crew, I wanted to learn the process, and I learned a lot by just sitting there and watching the crew work.
Don't be afraid to get over here. You just can't get over here. Oh yeah. So let's
Met some people and started helping people on some of their projects, and just started getting involved. And eventually I started to make some projects of my own, anywhere from really, really, really bad Star Trek satires that I made one in high school to film noir piece that I did, and I just finished a black comedy short. The approach that we all made for making the Tressaurian intersection was one where we wanted it to look and feel like an episode of the original series, and kind of poured some of that on. We did lots of gelled lights for color. We tried to avoid doing shots that they would never have done on the original series most of the time, although some of them may go beyond it. For the most part, we were just trying to make it look and feel like an episode of the original series, which was Jim's goal, and obviously that made it my goal too. And I think we succeeded in a lot of ways.
I found the Starship Exeter website on the internet a month or so before they actually released to the Savage Empire. I downloaded the Savage Empire, I watched it, and I was just stunned and impressed by it. I thought it was wonderful on all kinds of levels, and it was the sort of thing that I had wanted to do when I was young, and so I just identified with it. When they announced that they were going to do a second one, I was doing computer graphic animation as a hobby, and I sent Jim Johnson, here's some CG work attached to this email. Do you think you could use me on your second show? And he said that they could.
Jim oversaw putting together the whole team of everybody who was there, but early on in that process, he got in touch with Rhonda Abrams. She had experience working on films, and she knew a lot of people who worked on these kind of films. She early on helped Jim get in touch with a lot of the people who were crew, as well as a lot of people who wanted to try out for some of the roles that we hadn't had cast. Once production began, she worked as assistant to the director and did a whole heck of a lot of stuff, everywhere from working hand in hand with the director on filming the stuff to cleaning the bathroom. She just did all kinds of stuff while she was there, including helping get food for people, and figuring out where the food was going to come from, and figuring out how to get it on the budget we had, which was a real challenge in and of itself.
Selecting a cast for the Tressaurian intersection was a very different thing than when we selected a cast for Savage Empire. For Savage Empire, we used a lot of friends and acquaintances and just said, hey, come on down to this little 30 by 30 room where we're shooting our movie, and we'll put you in a Star Trek costume. And we mostly just tried to go for people who had kind of the look we were looking for in a particular character, or to be a good extra, or to be a good Klingon, or whatever. For this one, for the supporting roles and the guest stars, we actually went through an audition process. We advertised it on websites here in town, and we got a pretty good response, I think. For our first round of auditions, we had 30 or 40 people that we had to audition. It took 2 rounds of auditions to cast the show. The first round of auditions was conducted by Rhonda, our assistant director, and Rhonda videotaped all those auditions.
At the beginning of the casting process, they taped the auditions, and then Jim would jump on iChat and would stream that tape down to me, and we could watch the auditions together, make comments, and see what worked, and he and I collaborated to decide who we were going to bring back for callbacks.
During the second round of interviews, Scott was still in Portland at the time, and so we had a video downlink from Portland.
I was sitting at home in Portland with iChat, and I was able to interact with the actors.
And Scott was there on a little computer screen watching the auditions live.
Over the internet, which was an interesting experience that I've never really done, but it worked really well. I was able to see them live. I was able to ask them questions, to give them...
I think it was kind of impressive to a lot of the people who came to audition that we had the director there on a little screen watching them. When we looked at Elizabeth's first audition on tape, we thought, well, you know, she'd be okay as an extra, but I don't know. You know, we definitely weren't considering her for Richards, and Rhonda, who auditioned her the first time, told her that she might be a good Phillips.
Elizabeth Wheat, audition number 11.
And you're reading for?
And I'm reading for Richards.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. So I didn't hear anything for probably like 2 or 3 weeks after I auditioned, and then I got a call one day from Rhonda, and she said, come on in for a callback. And I said, okay, do I need to look at any sides? No, just come in.
When we called her back for auditions, when she got there, we told her, well, we were thinking of casting you as an extra. Will you go put on this costume, and we'll see what you look like in the mini skirt and the go-go boots.
Sit down, Richards. When did you graduate the academy?
18 months ago, sir.
Family in the service?
No, sir. I'm the first.
Uh-huh. That explains your romantic notions about the Star Service.
Romantic?
Naively idealistic. Who taught your advanced survival class? The old deacon?
Old deacon?
Yeah, an old coot with an eye patch.
Oh, Professor Matson. Yes, he taught us. I'll bet you didn't call him old coot to his face. I was like, oh. Aww. Well, apparently I showed them. So I did my audition.
And she came back, and we said, well, since we got you in the costume here, why don't we just have you read with me. She read with me the scene between Garevic and Richards in the briefing room. And it was toward the end of the day, as I recall, and a lot of the people who we had earlier, ones who I thought were going to be good candidates for the part of Richards, just didn't seem to connect with the story or understand or connect with me playing Garevic. And when I read with Liz, she seemed to be more at ease and seemed to get it, and so I felt like, yeah, we could make that work. And so then the next thing was I had to ask her if she'd dye her hair, because she was blonde at the time, and we wanted Richards to be a brunette, but she was happy to do that for us.
Afterwards, I went and changed out of my costume, and someone said to me, oh, go talk to Jim. Jim really wants to talk to you. And I was like, okay, and went out, and Jim was like, well, we really liked your audition for Richards, and but we envisioned her as a brunette. Would you consider dyeing your hair brown? And I was like, yeah, actually I've been thinking about it because I wanted a new look, you know, and I've never been brunette. And I was like, well, sure, yeah, no problem. Between my first and second audition, I went to the website and I watched the first Starship Exeter. So when I came to the second audition, I was like, hey, that's the guy, that's the main guy. You know, I read with Jim, and I was like, that's the guy that was on the movie. Oh my God, here he is. And so I did, and a couple days later, I get a call from Jim and says, congratulations, you got the part.
Okay, cut. The camera's rolling when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
And you're reading for?
Phillips.
Okay.
What do we know about the Tressaurians?
Tressaurians are bipedal, reptilian sentients believed to be related to the Gorn. They are first encountered on stardate 631.4 when a Tressaurian ship attacked the scout vessel USS Carson.
That's good, Ensign, but
The most significant encounter to date was the so-called Tangero incident, in which Tressaurians fired upon and disabled an unarmed civilian Federation transport, claiming that it had violated their territory. Among the survivors was current commander of this vessel, the cadet John Quincy Garovic.
That's it. Okay, cut. Right.
Gary Peters auditioned for the part of Cosnet, and ultimately we gave him that part. Gary Peters had the exact look we were going for the older Starship captain, Garovic and Cuddy's kind of mentor.
Hi, I'm Gary Peters, and I'm number 9.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh, they're looking for Cosmo.
okay.
Stardate 5009.13. We fought off a second Tressaurian. I'm sure it won't be the last. They're determined to keep us away from the weapon that destroyed our starbase. Sitting out there, orbiting this system's sun, he looks for all the universe like a kid's toy top.
That it. Okay. All
A
right,
little
cut.
more.
Oh, there is?
Mhm.
Oh. It says beep, sorry, I'm not reading.
Science Officer Morgan says that it uses the star's plasma as an energy source, and it'll be days before its power levels drop off enough for us to get a safe transporter lock on it. One way or another, we have got to retrieve it and get it back to Starfleet.
I don't remember how I got asked. I just remember getting involved somehow. I guess it was just after the roof was put on your garage that I started to get involved, putting together the pieces for the test filming. And golly, it seems that was a very long time ago. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I like reading sci-fi books. I like watching sci-fi movies, and so, of course, I'm a Trek fan as well. And there's a lot of attraction in the genre for me, and so I was really excited to get to do a sci-fi movie. How can you not go to Sulu to create the helmsman character? It's too easy. But I don't know. How do you develop a character that doesn't even have a name?
In casting for this episode, we were never able to find someone to fill the part of Dr. Fu. Dr. Fu is kind of this mysterious figure who was mentioned in the Savage Empire, and a lot of the fans on the internet who followed what we do had talked and conjectured about Dr. Fu and who he was and what he did and this and the other. And so we were looking for an older Asian gentleman to play Dr. Fu. He was supposed to be this kind of excitable old guy, grumpy guy who would lapse into Chinese every now and then when he would get mad or whatever. And we never found one.
I was auditioning to be a transporter guy, and we walked in to the audition. I met Jim there, but Scott, the director, was on a remote link, and he was in Portland, and it was kind of funny because they said, well, he'll be talking to us over the internet, and I didn't know whether to look at the camera or look at his image on the TV monitor, and I kept going back and forth, and I kept thinking to myself, they're going to think I'm a nut or something because I don't know who to look at. And so we went through the few lines that they had for me as the transporter guy, and then Scott and Jim had this private conversation over at the little computer setup away from the audition. And when they came back, Scott asked me if I'd be interested in auditioning for the ship's doctor. And so I said, sure, that'd be great. So they gave me a tricorder, and they had me read some lines with Jim and then do some tricorder readings on some of the stone blocks that were behind me that were the set for the audition. And they told me that they let me know, and so that was the end of the audition, and I thought sure that my not knowing who to look at or respond, in fact the tricorder made
even got the sound effect.
Hey, I can hear that.
Made a beep, which I hadn't expected, and I did a start, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a terrible audition, that's the last I've seen of those folks. And
5 minutes there.
oh, that's all right. appreciate your having me out and taking the time to.
Scott probably already talked to you about this. Is that something you would be interested in? Is a bigger role like the doctor?
Sure.
Okay.
And little did I know it, but a few days later, Scott called me and said that he was going to hire me for the part of the ship's doctor. So I was very excited about it.
Awesome. And so we cast Joe instead of an Asian man, and we just changed the name from Dr. Fu to Dr. Rosato. Joe told us he wouldn't mind if we used his real name, so we thought Rosato would be a good doctor's name. It sounded good.
Well, Dr. Rosato is kind of a curmudgeonly guy who's very sarcastic, and he doesn't have a lot of military bearings to answering the captain. He's a little bit flippant and doesn't necessarily show the kind of respect that particularly other people on the bridge think that he should show. And but they put up with him because he's a good doctor, and he's dedicated and he does his job.
Well, at first we just kind of waited for people to come knocking on our door. Like Scott Cummins, who directed the film, contacted us, and really a lot of times it was just a matter of whoever was willing to step up to the plate and help us with it.
What I originally agreed to do for Starship Exeter was go over the script and then help with formatting that into a manageable production, and working with the scenic restrictions and the prop restrictions and all that sort of thing. That's how I originally started. Is I was just kind of more an advisory role, and as well as allowing our shop to build whatever those guys needed within reason. That's why I chose to get involved with the Exeter project. It was these guys seemed I was a fan of the original show. I wanted to get involved get involved in another film production project, and the Star Trek stuff that I saw these guys doing really struck the right nostalgic chords with me. So it just seemed like a logical fit. I really seemed like something that I'd want to get involved with and take part in. So I signed on, and it's been a really rewarding thing for a lot of reasons. And I really like the process of making these films and making stuff like this. And so the fact that I can actually contribute to something that's going to actually turn into something and that everybody really loves, and there's just so much history to it, and I have a nostalgic kind of bug for it. It just seems like a great experience and a great fit. So I'm really glad to be on board.
Recently become acquainted with Dagoberto Patlan, who works at the PBS station in San Antonio. He seemed like he was pretty well connected, so I called him and I said, Dago, I need to find a good camera guy up here in Austin. And he said, oh, well, I know somebody. And he gave me Jason Pierce's phone number. I didn't know at the time that Jason was his brother-in-law, but we built some wall flats in Joel's garage to do a little test shoot, and we had Jason come down, and I could tell right away that he was really good. He knew how to frame a shot right, and had a good instinct for that. He knew lighting and different elements that I really didn't feel confident that I could do as well as we needed it to be done. I asked Jason if he would be willing to come on as our director of photography, and he was happy to do that. He committed himself to the 2-week shoot that we did at Austin Studios. He was there every night from dusk till dawn, and also came back and he directed the second unit stuff out in West Texas too.
I think the reason I did the film was it was a chance for me to just be director of photography. On my own stuff, I usually do everything. I write it and shoot it and edit it, and it's hard to distinguish those jobs after a while. And people ask me, I've entered contests before, and people are like, wow, your DP rocks and your editor rocks, but you suck, and stuff like that. I'm like, I did that stuff. So this was a chance for me to just concentrate on being the director of photography and having that job title. So
Josh and I had looked at all the Star Trek episodes, and we tried to kind of get a plan or an idea of how we wanted the show lit. And we decided that our favorite lighting was some of the early to mid second season Star Trek stuff. And we gave Jason a copy of The Immunity Syndrome and said, here, look at this. This is how we want the show lit. When it actually came time to light the show, I think we ran into kind of a situation which maybe was similar to when they started shooting the original Trek, the original Star Trek, and it took a little bit of experimentation to figure out how to light characters within that circle of the bridge, and so I think in some cases Jason hit the mark right on, and things really look like immunity syndrome. But in other cases, because we were figuring out how to light the sets, we look more like the first season stuff, where they hadn't quite figured out their lighting scheme exactly.
Every few years I get this anxiousness or something. I don't know how to describe it, but I get really antsy, like I need to get out and have an adventure or something. I need to get out and do something. And Exeter was my summer adventure in July in a extremely hot hangar. So
as we got closer to production, we needed an actual crew to shoot this movie, and again, there were some people who would just come to us, but Scott and our assistant director Rhonda Abrams went through a lot of work, posting notices and interviewing people to work as crew on the film. Even the day before production started, though, we still had people walking onto the stage and saying, "Hey, I can do this. Can I help you guys out?" And a lot of those people, like Stan, who helped us with the audio on set. Stan Ginsel. A lot of those people turned out to be really good and a great asset to what we're doing.
In my email, I introduced myself and I said that I had worked in the film industry for like a long time, 20 some odd years, and done everything from holding booms and doing location sound to post-production to editing and what I currently do, which is screen dailies for big motion pictures. I can offer my services in any of those areas, anything that y'all need. And they emailed me back and said, please, yes, we'd like, we really need somebody to help with the sound. And so I didn't actually do the boom. I just sort of helped they had two other fellas, younger fellas, that were really eager to learn. And it's like I told Jim, I said, I'd rather teach somebody else than for me just to stand out there. I'll be there and watch and make sure that things go well. But, I'd really rather teach someone else, which is what I did. Young fella Steven ran the board.
But keeping people on set every night from dusk till dawn when you're not paying them did get to be a little bit of a problem. There was a core group of people who were filming this thing who were dedicated and there every night. But I did notice that some of the production assistants and people like that started to drop off after the first few days or the first week. And so by the second week, we were operating more with just a skeleton crew, than the large crowd we had on the first night.
There's a winner, there's a winner, there's a winner. And you do that anyways when you're on a set or whatever. You might say, wow, that guy's really good, or that gal's really got it going on, or whatever. But with these guys and gals, I sat there and I was like, wow, these people, a lot of these people have big futures. I mean, they're really, really plugging in. They really get it, And maybe they're a little green and a little rough around the edges, and they got to smooth things out and put a few more years under their belt or a couple more shows or something. But they really, really are in the right state of mind. They're really in the right place, and so I was impressed. I thought the volunteers on the production side were great, and I thought that the fans that came out and were doing, when they do whatever, I use. I think we're talking in a more broader sense.
Well, it sounds like a third episode is really, really sort of being shaped up. And when it comes into reality, Cuddy will be there.